Love that he's here this week. How about it for Michael Shure?
No, I was last week. We had technical problems in the field last week. Could not get
yeah.
a signal. Yeah. But
you tried. That's right. You came on late, I think, last week because you couldn't get a signal out.
Convention. There was had some rough times, but the convention was also difficult because of travel and whatnot. But
well, we appreciate you do. You ford a lot of whitewater rivers to be with us. I don't know. Normally, I wouldn't start with something so sad, but we were talking about it, and it was even remarked on before we even started talking about it in the chat. And I know you're a hockey fan, but just from the standpoint of humanity, this story that just broke with the brothers being the victims of drunk driving. One of them's an NHL star, isn't that right, Michael?
Yeah, Johnny Gaudreau. His nickname's Johnny Hockey. He's been in Columbus for 2 seasons. He was the most sought after free agent coming out of Calgary, where he played a good long time. He signed a huge contract, and the fact that he went to Columbus really put the Blue Jackets on the map again in hockey, as they'd had some rough years. It's an impossibly sad story. He and his brother both played at Boston College. They were in there. He's a native of New Jersey and South Jersey, and he was everyone was in town because his sister was getting married in Philadelphia today, and it is such an impossibly sad story. I mean, forgetting the hockey and the Blue Jackets and all of that, he was by all accounts a really good guy, and not just, I was listening to NHL radio earlier where they, one of the people said, look, we the thing is to not speak ill of the dead, but we're not going to glorify somebody if they weren't great. Johnny was just always great, and everybody loved him.
I guess they called him Johnny Hockey because he was just so enthusiastic.
Exactly. Yeah. He he represented North America in the World Championships. He played at BC, like I said, on the U.S. team, and then, of course, for Calgary and Columbus. And he was one of the better players in hockey. He was a small guy, too, and he was just so hungry for the game that he turned himself into a really good player.
So what happened was he's 31 and his brother, 29, they were riding bikes. They were just riding bicycles, and it wasn't even late at night. It was 8:19 when this whole thing happened. Country road in Oldman's Township in southern New Jersey near the Delaware River, and a Jeep Grand Cherokee that was trying to pass 2 slower-moving vehicles hit them. And the Jeep driver was this 43-year-old guy charged with 2 counts of death by automobile, and he was under the influence of alcohol. And he apparently had 5 to 6 beers prior to the accident. It's a profound tragedy, and as you say,
it's a horrible story. Even if you're not a mad hockey fan like I am, it's just an impossibly sad human story. If you saw this about 2 people you didn't know and it happened on a back road in Ireland, you would still be shocked, as every word of the story made it worse and worse, from the fact that it was his brother to the fact that he has 2 kids and a wife. Yeah, it just all of it's just so.
Yeah, and they were scheduled to be groomsmen the next day at their sister's wedding, as we mentioned, in Philadelphia. So their uncle said, last night we lost 2 husbands, 2 fathers, 2 sons, 2 brothers, 2 sons and brothers-in-law, 2 nephews, 2 cousins, 2 family members, 2 teammates, 2 friends, but truly 2 amazing humans. Really, really sad. Well, somehow we have to pivot from this story, but I'm glad we got it. I have to tell you, early this morning, I got the text from Michael Shure about this, just sort of remarking on how sad this was. And I mean, I read the piece. It's profoundly sad. So I know that you, so thank you for bringing it to my attention first. And of course, now it's all over the news. All right, now to politics. Let's start with the interview last night. I will bring you up to speed and say that I thought, just for my part, that she did a fine job, like an acceptable job. There was, I thought, she didn't fall off the balance beam, and she didn't wow the crowd, but I don't know that it was a wow the crowd situation anyway. I thought the one thing I'll remark on, because I did in the first hour, is that the physical setup was really awkward, where Walz looked huge, and I know he is a bigger guy, and she looked tiny though, and she's, she's at the corner of the table, he's closer to camera. It was just so that was really awkward on the 2 shots and the 3 shots, but that's not really what this is about, and that's not her. She has no control over that, of course. But apart from that, I thought it was okay. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was a little awkward to me, but it wasn't blindingly awkward. It wasn't distracting enough. She's a petite woman. He's a bigger guy. It is what it is. I think that we who watch this stuff a lot, and that's everybody. It's not, you don't have to be any kind of expert or have covered it in order to have opinions. But Democrats particularly have grown accustomed to, is this going to be okay? Is this person going to make it through the interview? Because President Biden often struggled, and I think that's we're conditioned to think that everything is fantastic just because they made it through. I think it was fine. I don't think this was ever going to push the ball forward. It could perhaps have moved it backward, and it certainly didn't do that. When you have this kind of a thing and you anticipate this, you want to look into every nook and cranny and kind of like dissect every word and every movement, and that you don't have to do that. I mean, she gave some pretty good answers, some less good answers, and nobody won or lost the presidential race last night.
How did you think Dana Bash did? I mean, I see in the chat she was an embarrassment, and she, it's funny in the chat we've gotten, she was an embarrassment. She was too softball, and then I've also seen she's obviously a right winger, and she went after her. So I feel as though
I thought
Dana
she did.
Bash, yeah, go ahead.
I think she did a very good job. I mean, that interviewing, anybody of high political stature, perhaps any stature, they now look at the interviewer more as much as they look at the interviewee. And I thought Dana did a great job, actually. Like she pressed the vice president on some changes in her positions on different issues. And I think softballing would not have been to ask a question 3 times about fracking, to not ask a question about immigration. I mean, that's softballing. At the end, there was some softball stuff, but you're allowed to ask some softball questions. So, Gus Walz, the governor's son, that was a touching thing that happened at the convention. That was a poignant photo of Harris's niece or grandniece that was, looked at so much. You're allowed to talk about that too, and that doesn't make it a softball. But they did talk about issues, and she pressed, I think, the vice president in a way that she should have been pressed that a softball wouldn't have.
So we come out of that, and the result of that is that nothing really changes as a result of the interview.
Right.
Do we have some?
Which is, by the way, a good thing for Vice President Harris, right?
Sure.
I think, like I said just now, I don't think you're not going to sort of win an election in one sit-down interview, but you could hurt yourself, and they certainly didn't do that.
I mean, I think that what's interesting is, and you're hearing this in the right-wing media sphere, is, Donald Trump is always talking to the press, and he's always sitting down for interviews. I see him sitting down with Dr. Phil. I see him sitting down with Elon Musk, who started the interview by talking about how much he had both endorsed and supported Donald Trump and feels he's best for America's future, and he's pledged all this money. I mean, that's not an interview. That's I don't know what that is. That's an endorsement.
But he has, I mean, to his credit, he has made himself more available to the press because he's a performance artist in a way. And that's where he gets his, that's where he moves the ball forward a lot. And that's where he's out front and he's the center of attention. It fits his personality. But I mean, I think it's fair to say that he has been more available to the press than most presidents and most people of that stature are. And so, to that end, I guess he gets credit because he's taking questions. What he does with his answers is entirely different because it's a forum for him to, make things up and to bend the truth and to embellish. And that's an entirely different thing. That he's available, though, is inarguable.
Albert, did I give you the Trump interview stuff where he's talking about his abortion stance or anything like that, or do I need to?
Yes, I have.
Albert.
Yep.
Okay, Albert, play a little bit of that for Michael Shure if you would. I'd like your reaction to this. This is
the
him.
state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I'm voting that I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years, 52 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path. Our country's been torn apart by Roe v. Wade for years. And if you go back 10 years, 15 years, all they wanted to do is they wanted it back in the states. They didn't want it to be in the federal government. I was able to do that. I believe in exceptions for life of the mother. If you look, incest, rape.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah. He's now doing damage control, it would seem to me, on the abortion issue.
Is that Trump or Lester Holt that you're talking about?
Both, I think.
Yeah. I think he is. I mean, they're trying to figure a way out of it. Like that, he started a ball rolling with his Supreme Court picks and his lower court picks, and now it's rolling out of control when it comes to the politics of the issue. And for him to say that people have been wanting, everybody's been clamoring for, and I'm not quoting him directly, for an end to Roe v. Wade. That simply wasn't true. In popular, when you poll America, it's almost 3-2 or 2-1 the support for Roe. So I think that he's got to navigate this issue in certain places, and he can afford to alienate some pro-life people with that position, which is the luxury of being the Republican nominee. He almost did that a little bit in 2016. He gave a wink and a nod to people, and he tightened up a lot once he got out of the primary. So I think that it's going to be tricky, and I don't think anybody who is vehemently pro-choice, or for whom abortion is their number one issue, that I don't think any of them are going to be voting for Donald Trump. So he doesn't have a lot.
And what you're similarly saying is, on the other side, those people who want a total abortion ban in America, the pro-lifers as they call themselves, they will be voting for Donald Trump, because he's serving up, despite what he says, judges that are turning back the clock.
Yeah. And they can suffer a little bit of political moderation out front, because they've gotten what they've paid for and in Donald Trump. So it's really the independent voters that he's trying to navigate around. And it's a question of whether or not they buy what he's selling. And I think it's going to be harder for him to sell it in 2024 than it was in 2016.
Including the reference to Ronald Reagan was not an accident. He answered with that, and I thought, oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, Ronald Reagan. He's like Ronald Reagan.
He won't do that when he talks about immigration, though. People pull out Ronald Reagan on the Republican side when it's convenient, and it becomes less and less convenient the farther right that party goes.
How much damage, I'll ask you, is the Arlington Cemetery dust-up doing? Again, it's clear that campaign staffers physically moved someone who was trying to stop them from photographing in an area you're not supposed to photograph at Arlington Cemetery. The initial denials, then changing the stories, and then ultimately, and do you have that also, Albert? Did I send that to you, of Trump saying, hey, they asked me to take a picture, and he does his thing where he's essentially just serving up facts. Here we go. Here's a little bit of Trump talking about that.
While I was there, I didn't ask for a picture. While I was there, they said, sir, could we have a picture at the grave? You have the tombstone. You have the name of the tombstone. They're crying. They died because of incompetent leadership of Harris and Biden. They said, sir, could we have a picture? I said, yes. All of a sudden, I hear that it's some kind of a PR thing. It's a disgrace.
So there you go. Thank you for that. Thoughts, Michael?
I love when campaigns start and it becomes Harris and Biden. Can you imagine if people referred to the Pence Trump years to Donald Trump? How we would hear that. I I think it's going to hurt. I actually do. I think it furthers a narrative. Vote Vets is up with an ad that I think I may have sent to you already today, Mark, that is scathing toward Donald Trump. He has a record of saying and doing things that are offensive to veterans. And I do think that independent veteran voters, younger veterans, people who weren't veterans in 2016 who are now, I think their support is going to be harder for him to get. And that's something that Republicans count on. Again, I'm not saying that Democrats are going to win the veteran vote, but we're talking about what you just outlined there, and which is that the Republicans that are supporting Donald Trump are staunchly behind him. Same on the other side. And there's this small number of voters in the middle that are made up of veterans, African Americans, white Wall Street workers, pharmacy workers, and restaurant workers. I mean, they're everybody, right? But Donald Trump needs them, and he needs them in a way that he can't count on them anymore. And I think it's going to be, this is just another challenge for him now that the race is closer, for him to get these voters. And I think so. That's why I think it hurts. I don't think it hurts in a macro way, but very much so in a micro way.
I want to play you the spot that is running. It's really very edgy and very directed. And it speaks to, before you run it, I just want to ask one thing, or just remark on one thing. He's been insulting toward veterans and toward those with military service and Gold Star families, and using the military as props when he sent them to the south of the border. Remember at Christmas time, because there's this, the invasion of people from Latin America were coming. In other words, he's used the military in ways like he uses the flag when he hugs the flag. Right. It hasn't really done any kind of damage at the ballot box for him, I'd say. That is, but you're saying now we've reached a tipping point, or you disagree? You'd say it's always done damage.
I think it's, look, I think had he not done it, he would have gotten more military votes. There are definitely people in the military, but I still think that he has, and I still think that he will get the majority of the military vote. But I do think that there are people who are, like I said, I just outlined it, newer veterans and people who are looking for reasons to vote for one of these candidates that it's going to push away. And it's outwardly insulting, and people don't like being outwardly insulted. It's not make or break in this election, but every vote is. So cumulative in a military state, if you look at any of the military states that are in play, I think particularly of Georgia and Pennsylvania, immediately Arizona as well, that every vote counts in those states. And if he ticked off a member of the military or a veteran because of this, that matters. And I'm sure that he has.
Play the spot, Albert, if you would, please.
We've got Trump on the run, scared. His insults about service members catching up with him. He's panicked. Losers and suckers, he called us, confirmed. Refusing to be seen with wounded warriors because it makes him queasy. Refusing to salute the fallen of World War I because he, quote, doesn't understand what was in it for them. Because he was afraid his dye job might run in the rain faster than he ran to a quack doctor when the draft board called his number. Comparing his sexploitations with the likes of Jeffrey Epstein to the sacrifice of those who went in his place to Vietnam. Now, maybe the greatest insult of all, turning a military cemetery visit into a political stunt with cameras in tow. In Section 60, one of the most hallowed acres of all, and when an Army civilian official told them they were breaking federal law that bans politics and campaign cameras, Trump thugs verbally and physically assaulted her. Disgusting. Donald Trump, the grave markers veterans and military families drop a knee to are not your political props. They represent the heroes we served alongside, men and women you could never measure up to, friends who lived and died by the oath we all swore to uphold, something you will never understand, and why we're doing our damnedest to make sure no service member ever has to salute you as Commander-in-Chief ever again.
It's a powerful spot.
Oh man, it's a really powerful spot. I mean, it goes through piece by piece. I wish they hadn't said the hair dye or the dye job line, because it was
cheapens
beneath
it a little bit.
Yeah, it was beneath that ad, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from the fact that it was a really effective ad. And I think that, going to what we said before, these people are insulted by this man, and many of them are. And that doesn't happen in a vacuum. That matters.
Hey, let me ask you about something we've never touched on before, and it's a thing, and you can tell me if it's a thing that should be a thing or if it's just something that is a distraction. I suspect it'll kind of fall into the latter category. It's this bookmakers' constant shifting on who is the likely winner of the presidential election. They constantly update these odds on various sites. And so after the interview last night, which, as I say, I thought was just it's a push at worst. You know what I mean? I didn't think it was a win or a loss, and you've just kind of made the same point with more insightful specifics, which is why you're here. The idea somehow that she could slide a little bit, but she has. On the betting sites, her chances are now actually have dropped a bit. Can you just tell me whether that really is a thing that I should look at, or should I just, forget it forever?
Mark, if I told you years ago to not look at betting sites, both of our lives would be better. So I'm not going to change your mind now. But honestly, I think, it matters. I think gambling is new to this, right? And there's always an edge that the player has until the bookies figure out how it works. I know a lot of people made a lot of money on MMA or UFC when it first started, because the bookies didn't really know how to handicap it and which way it was going. And now the bookies are doing what they're very good at doing, which is winning and beating the player. So I think this is kind of a new thing. And I think it matters in that it does tell you a little bit about where smart money typically is. I think that it's politics hasn't changed enough overnight to think that just a bland interview changes the course of
Sure.
the election. And so I think that, in the big picture, it hasn't changed that much. So I think the bookies are going to learn that. And again, we predicted it here. Kamala Harris is going to have some tough weeks of these next 67 days. There are going to be some tough days. There are going to be days that are not as good. There's going to be an answer she gives that isn't great. There's going to be a hot mic somewhere. There's going to be something that we find out about somebody that she knew. I mean, all stuff we can't predict. But if she keeps going in this direction, she's going to keep this as tight as it could possibly be, and probably in some states overtake in a permanent way the former president. So I think that it's interesting to look at this stuff, but I don't think they know what to compute just yet. But they're going to get it much quicker than we do.
And by the way, just to be clear, it's still essentially a dead heat. It was a shift of 1 point, but it was just weird that they shifted toward Trump. But it's essentially they're tied.
It's the very first thing to happen, right? And that in this, it's just everything has been pro Kamala living in a dreamland, and now as it comes back down to the fact that it's going to be Labor Day Monday and this election starts and everybody's off and running. I think that they're going to be a little more nitpicky about things, and the honeymoon will end. But that doesn't mean that the race is going in the wrong direction either.
Elon Musk has said, and clearly it's the case, that he, on X, Twitter acquisition that he made, he's flagged the NPR story on Trump's Arlington Cemetery visit as spammy or unsafe. So that algorithm then will not serve that story up. In fact, it will beat it down, and it really won't be served. It's interesting when you have a social media ally like Elon Musk, how that might influence the conversation.
He's what Rupert Murdoch was 8 years ago for Donald Trump.
Right.
And so it's good to have friends in those places, and Donald Trump certainly does.
I don't know how many people are on X anymore, and I don't know that, in these swing states it really matters. But I think the media is still there. So to the extent that media is served certain things, I think those things can kind of get some altitude as a result.
I think that's a great point, right? I mean, the viewership of it is not as important as the people who are still, in its halls, and that's definitely reporters and media people.
what is Michael Shure's beat looking like? Are you going to go back out into the heartland, as it's called? Are you going to go to the swing states? Yeah.
I'm going to go to some of the swing states. I'm going to be, attending some Trump rallies and hopefully covering this both from here and on the road, and some of the Senate races too. I expect to be looking at, and especially in Nevada and Montana and places where there are close races that people are going to start paying much closer attention to.
Can the Democrats hang on to the Senate?
I think their best case scenario is to stay right where they are, is to, have the vice president and Governor Walz in their hopes be the deciding vote in the Senate. But it's not looking as good there as it is in the House at this moment. And I think Vice President Harris being at the top of the ticket really helps the Democratic House, because a lot of those contested seats are in California, where that's her home state. She's a favorite daughter, and because of that, I think you're going to see a lot of a lot of turnout in California, and especially in those competitive House races that I think will help the Democratic candidate. I'd rather be the Democrat running in those races than the Republican since this change in the election.
It's weird that California is critical in terms of the future of the Democrats on Capitol Hill.
No. I mean, when California and New York were really basically decided the House for the Republicans in 2020 and 2022, in 2022, that's the most amazing thing, is that these two states that are as blue as you can get, really, and in terms of consistency and recency, and those are the two states that really gave the Republicans their majority in the House. It's astonishing.
Dre24, and then I'll let you go. Dre24 says stock market higher than ever, and Truth Social, not so much. Donald Trump's giant social media company, which was, I think, valued at $9 billion at one point. I think it's down considerably, Michael. Now it is crashing.
Yeah, I know that it is. I don't know any specifics about it, so I'm not going to pretend to know those. But I know things are not good on the financial side of Truth Social. But it's regardless, it serves its purpose for Donald Trump. It may not be a financial purpose, but he's figured out how to get around financial difficulty. But Truth Social is still a platform that he uses, and as far as we know, and until we know otherwise, to his advantage.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you again, always, for joining us. We look forward to next week. Find Michael Shure across the great World Wide Web with his fine reporting, TYT and elsewhere, and we love seeing you on Fridays. Michael Shure, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.